In this case, loving, devoted, community-minded families at Word of Faith Fellowship have faced brutal assaults of pernicious fabrications, innuendos, and outright lies. Complicit in this terrible theater of the absurd are certain news outlets who care more about readership than presenting truth. A caring church, Word of Faith Fellowship, with caring parents who are bringing children into the foster care of their home and ultimately adoption, have again been brutally assaulted with lies and innuendos. So it's time for real people to tell the real story against the backdrop of what has become a terrible cycle precipitated by people that have names. Names like Nancy Burnette and Mitch Weiss, who with others foment attacks against the church wanting to live out a practical gospel for the orphans, for the elderly, for the disparaged, and for the hurting. So listen now to real people, in this case, caring, compassionate, and engaged moms, sharing their hearts. They have nothing to gain except showcasing their integrity. The facts are clear. A foster care process that's very deliberate, adoption protocols, a legal review, assignments by judges, all follow to the spirit and letter of the law. Yet, against that backdrop, there are still shrill voices filled with falsehoods, flinging accusations born from dark places of religious persecution. They will not and cannot overcome what heaven knows to be true. So listen now to real people as they share their hearts, how they brought in children who mothers had relinquished because of their own broken lives in what was a heroic choice in the moment. Listen as they describe the love, the care, the engagement, the sacrifice willingly given to show what a real gospel means in the trenches of life. They're real people with honest stories. Authenticity cannot be fabricated. And they have names like Allison, Hete and Werner, Jim and Laura. Credible parents come through in their testimonies, and you will never be able to change a person's real story just for the sake of a headline. Listen now.
Hi, my name's Allison, and I'm here to tell you the truth about the latest AP article that came out. My husband and I went to Rutherford County and began the process for foster and adoptive parents. It was a 3-month-long process, and we completed all the steps, which include a background check, a home study, fingerprints, things like that, to qualify you and certify you to be certified in the state of North Carolina as a foster and adoptive parent. I worked in Shelby, which I still do for over 12 years now, and some co-workers and friends of mine there suggested that maybe I should go to Cleveland County and see if there were also some opportunities to foster and adopt there. My husband and I called the supervisor at the Cleveland County DSS, and she was more than glad to talk to us about it because she saw our credentials, she saw our lives. We spent a great length of time talking to her and telling her our story. And so she told us that she would definitely keep us in mind in the future for opportunities to foster and adopt. So after several months, we got a phone call from her. It was like a miracle. And she said that there was a baby, which is exactly what we wanted, in our lives, in our home. And we went and met this baby. He was 2 months old, and he was absolutely perfect. He was in a foster home currently because his mother was in prison. His 2 other siblings were already in foster care with their parental rights terminated. And it was very, very favorable that this child would also go into the adoptive stage. The parental rights of the biological parents were already terminated prior to our adoption. We had nothing to do with it. They were terminated, and the baby went through the system as any normal standard adoption does. When we met him, he was so beautiful. He even favored my husband in a way, and we just knew that he was supposed to be a part of our family. He was precious and sweet and the best baby ever. In fact, the foster mom said he was the best baby that she had ever taken care of. So when he came into our home, our lives were complete. We had never even known what it was like to not have such a sweet baby. So as time went on and the foster process was progressing, and we were moving toward the adoptive stage. There were some definite foster visits that came with the social worker. They came every month to our home. They were amazed at how well that baby loved my family, my husband and I. It was wonderful, and she loved us and we loved her. So there was a point when it came time for his 12-month well check, as all babies have to go through appointments with the doctor. On the morning of his 12-month well check, my husband abandoned the baby and myself because he decided that he did not want to have any part in vaccinating a child. His statement to me was that if I cannot not vaccinate my child, I cannot and will not be his father. That is horrible. That is a horrible statement to make. Vaccinations, as we know, are there to protect children. They're state mandated, and they are required for children to go to school in this state. And I knew that he was going to have to go to school. I knew that we needed to be up to date with these vaccinations. And he totally flipped in a moment's time and abandoned us both. He never came back to our home. He never spoke with our family again. And he relinquished his responsibilities in the adoption process. He never one time, not once, asked to see the child again. The DSS was absolutely wonderful. They saw how the baby had bonded with me, and as difficult as the situation was, they were favorable for the child to stay in my care. And that's exactly what I wanted, and that's exactly what my family wanted. And so, as a result, the process was finished with me as the sole adoptive parent for my son. I wish that you could see him. He is so beautiful. He is so smart. So smart, you have no idea. At 2.5 years old, he knew all of the states and capitals of our country. He knew all of the presidents of the United States by face, in order, and he can recite some of their speeches. He also knows 200 birds and their bird calls, which is totally amazing to me because it's phenomenal. You don't see this in children this age, and you don't see this in children that have been abused or shaken. He is so well taken care of and so loved, and you only feel that from him at every point that you're with him. He loves to talk, and he loves to be with you. He loves people, everyone around him, my family and my church and his school. As a medical professional, one thing I can tell you, because the accusations of being abused and shaken are totally false. I know from taking care of pediatric patients and newborn patients that there are short-term and long-term effects from being shaken. They are far-reaching into later childhood and adolescence, and my child has none of those effects. He is perfect. So the other thing that I want you to know is that there is a little key tie to this whole situation. And that is that my husband, Tim Cornelius, was the brother to John Cornelius, who is married to Lori Cornelius. Lori Cornelius works at the Cleveland County DSS, and she did work there at the time of our whole process. During that time, she was not involved in one bit of our case. She had no input, period. She does not even work in that department. She is an investigator, and we were in the adoption and foster department. The only thing that I ever received from her was joy and congratulations over adopting a baby as a part of her family. The other key point to the whole story is that after Tim abandoned my son and I, he and his sister, Teresa, became very close social friends with Nancy Burnette, who he had no relationship with during our marriage. And Nancy's accusations during this article are very malicious toward Lori Cornelius. She had no part in our adoption, and it's very obvious that Nancy was the key to pulling all of this together. Nancy is trying to destroy Lori's credibility and her profession, and that is unacceptable. I love my son. I would never allow him to be a part of one bit of abuse or neglect or any kind of shaking. He is precious. And one more thing that I want to say is that 1 year after Tim abandoned me and the baby, I did receive a DSS allegation at my front door. It was not over abuse or shaking. It was over not giving the child a cup of milk when he was crying, which was absolutely ridiculous and not true and found to be unsubstantiated by the Rutherford County DSS. So these allegations, these accusations toward my church, toward Lori Cornelius are absolutely unfounded, and there's no merit to them. During our foster and adoption process, we did nothing wrong. We did not game the system. We did everything appropriately as designated by the state of North Carolina and the Cleveland County DSS. And everything is documented in our court documents and at the DSS currently.